in a second. Okay. Welcome to another IWA Water Loss Specialist Group webinar. We're very lucky to have Tom Crowder with us today in our penultimate presentation of 2025. So he's going to be talking about the components of the water balance and their effects on uncertainty and performance indicators. So we're going to just hand it straight over to Tom. If you're not on mute, if you could go on mute, that would be absolutely brilliant. This recording will be on YouTube afterwards. And Tom's asked for especially hard questions at the end of his presentation on there. So, Tom, we're going to hand it over to you.
Thank you, Michael. As I was saying, if there are some hard questions, I think we've got some, we've got David Pearson and Stuart Trow and Marion and Jorg I can see on the screen who hopefully can help me out. Thank you very much. My webinar today is on the components of the water balance and how their uncertainty affects performance indicators. First of all, just a little introduction about myself. So I'm a director of Crowder Consulting, and I've been working there for 25 years. And I've always worked in water networks and water loss management. And we do a lot of different things in that space, from doing the consultancy to leak detection to providing software. And I'm especially passionate about training and professional development within the company. And that's just a photo of me with my family and my daughter, she's 18 today. So just to mention that. Just as a bit of an icebreaker, really, I don't know whether you all know, but tomorrow is World Water Loss Day, December the 4th. So hopefully you can put something on your social media channels or to raise awareness about water loss in the world. And as a bit of an icebreaker, I asked our friend ChatGPT about what's more important, my daughter's 18th birthday, which is today, or World Water Loss Day, which is tomorrow. And this is what ChatGPT said. It said, well, my daughter turning 18 is a big deal. She becomes an adult, she can vote, she can sign contracts, and will probably still ask me for money. World Water Loss Day, on the other hand, reminds us not to waste water. So really, both days are about precious resources disappearing faster than I'd like. But if I don't say my daughter's birthday is more important, I might not survive either day. So there you go. That's a bit of an icebreaker, but it's the important message is to remember tomorrow that it is World Water Loss Day, and let's try and make a lot of noise about it on LinkedIn and other social media channels. So just to get on with my webinar. So in today's session, we're going to convert the UK water balance for an English water company into the IWA format to explore the results and benefits of doing so. And then we're going to apply the IWA Water Loss Specialist Group recommended method to assess the reliability of the water balance using confidence intervals to the same UK, to the same English water company. We'll then demonstrate the UK approach to assess reliability, applying maximum likelihood estimation to reconcile top down and bottom up to the IWA water balance. And then we'll explore the performance indicators for water losses and show the impact of uncertainty on the results. So this is the agenda. We'll do the top-down water balance first, then uncertainty analysis, then bottom-up reconciliation, then the performance indicators, and finally a summary at the end and some time for questions. And really what this webinar is about it's about sharing knowledge, and also, discussing, some of the content and answering some questions. So first up, the top-down water balance and a bit of a background to the UK water balance. So the UK water balance used by England and Wales was developed before the IWA water balance, which is a refined version for global application. As the UK water balance had already been adopted, this original version has continued to be used by England and Wales. However, Ofwat is currently reviewing the merits of the IWA methodology. For example, it offers clearer terminology such as real and apparent losses. And a key consideration of Ofwat is the difficulty in comparing leakage data between English and Welsh companies and international counterparts due to the differing methodologies. So basically, Ofwat is considering the IWA water balance at the moment. So from a UK perspective, or a UK water company perspective, they might be thinking about this at the moment. And what they would be thinking about is, well, what does the IWA water balance look like? Because they're used to doing their current UK water balance. And how does it compare with the UK water balance? And what would it mean if we had to do our reporting based on the IWA water balance? And should we be paying more attention to international comparisons of performance indicators? At the same time, the English water companies have quite stringent or difficult targets to meet over the next 5 years. And this particular water company that we're going to focus on, has to reduce leakage by 16% and per capita consumption by 7%. So there's quite a lot of challenges or thoughts that the English water companies are facing. Firstly, just a very quick overview of the IWA water balance, and we'll explore this a lot more during today's session. So it's a structured framework to account for all water entering and leaving a distribution system, and it classifies water use and losses into standard components to support consistent global reporting. And the IWA water balance focuses on breaking down non-revenue water into its key components, and we'll explore those today. Mapping the UK to the IWA water balance is fairly straightforward, because most of the components in the IWA water balance are very similar to the UK, but they just use different terminology, and so they can be mapped. And that's part of what what I'll show today is how they map to the IWA water balance. So firstly, just some definitions. So when we think about non-revenue water, this refers to the water that has been produced by a water utility, but it's not billed to customers. It represents the gap between the amount of water put into the distribution system and the amount billed for consumption. And it includes three main components: real losses or physical losses, apparent losses or commercial losses, and unbilled authorized consumption. And non-revenue water is often expressed by international utilities as a percentage of water supplied, or it can be expressed as a percentage of system input if they want to make the percentage lower. As real or physical losses occur due to leaks in a distribution system, including pipes, storage tanks, and other infrastructure. And this water physically escapes the network before it reaches customers. And the first really interesting fact is that If the UK or England and Wales water companies did report on real losses, its leakage would be slightly lower because it at the moment the UK includes externally metered underground supply pipe leakage. So in other words, leakage that is beyond the water meter on supply pipes in its total leakage that it reports, whereas the IWA real losses doesn't include that. And then apparent losses or commercial losses, uh, these occur when water is used but not properly measured. So things like meter under registration and common causes include theft and unauthorized connections. And there's a lot of emphasis internationally on replacing meters to reduce apparent losses as part of their non-revenue water programs. In the UK, um, it the components are deducted to derive reported leakage, whereas in the IWA water balance, they are included under the non-revenue water. So that's really what this illustration is showing here, where we've got apparent losses included in non-revenue water, where we've got in the UK water taken illegally unbilled, meter under registration, and that is excluded from reported leakage. And then in for unbilled authorized consumption, this is water used for legitimate purposes that are not billed, such as firefighting, mains flushing, or water supplied free of charge. And this would be mapped to water taken legally unbilled and operational use in the UK water balance. And similar to apparent losses, these are included in the non-revenue water, the unbilled authorized consumption, whereas in the UK, water taken legally unbilled and distribution system operational use are excluded from leakage. So when we look at the top-down water balance for this particular UK water company, this is what it looks like. So it starts with what we call distribution input, and then we deduct all of the billed consumption. We deduct the operational use. We deduct the water taken legally unbilled and illegally unbilled, and we deduct the meter under registration, and then we end up with the top-down leakage, which is what we use in the UK water balance. And we compare this with the bottom-up leakage, which I'll go into later, and reconcile that with it. So in this particular case, the bottom-up leakage was just over 335 megalitres. So there's a very small negative discrepancy, and the reported leakage was 335 megalitres after reconciling it with the bottom-up. If we applied the same rules for leakage or real losses as the IWA water balance, then we wouldn't add on the externally metered underground supply pipe losses. And so this is really just illustrating that the real losses would be slightly lower because we wouldn't be adding on this amount here to the leakage. And so it's just showing that discrepancy between real losses and the leakage that we report in the UK. So the first thing really to focus on is the non-revenue water calculation. And really here in the UK, we don't focus that much on non-revenue water as a number or as something that we report. And it internationally, obviously, it's a very important part of the water balance. And if the water company that we're looking at now were to move to the IWA approach and then report based on non-revenue water, then the figure that it would be reporting on would be over 86 megalitres higher, or 26% higher than the number that they're currently reporting on, which is the leakage. And these tables here just show how the non-revenue water would be calculated for this English water company. So on the left, we've got the English or UK terminology. And then on the right, we've got the IWA terminology. And then we can see this calculation of non-revenue water, which is the water supplied, take away the billed authorized consumption. And then we've got our non-revenue water there. And in this particular case, it would be around 22% of the water supplied. Then if we then calculate the real and apparent losses, if this particular water company were to move to the IWA approach and report based on real losses, it would be 27.7 megalitres lower, or 8.3% lower than the leakage that they're currently reporting on. And again, what we've got here is the UK terminology in terms of the water balance and what they call each of the components, and then the international, the IWA terminology. And we can see how we start with non-revenue water, and then we take away our unbilled authorized consumption to get the water losses, and then we take away the unauthorized consumption and the customer metering inaccuracies, which is our apparent losses, and then what we're left with is the real losses. So it's really just showing how the two water balances, although they use different terminology, they do line up quite well along with each other. So if we look at this particular water company, then we can see that the non-revenue water would be 421 megalitres, or 22% of water supplied. And that's broken down into real losses, around 304 megalitres, or 72%, apparent losses, which is 95 megalitres, 23%, and unbilled authorized consumption, 22 megalitres, 5%. And its ILI would be 1.5, and its curly would be 25 based on these real losses. And these are some of the performance indicators that we'll go into a bit more detail later. It's also worth noting that it was quite straightforward based on the water balance information that this English company has to provide to split the real losses into its three components. I mean, see how much there is in terms of leakage on mains, leakage on overflows at storages, and then leakage on service connections. So you can see the main bit of leakage is the leakage on the mains, and then we have leakage on service connections and only a small amount of leakage and overflows at storage sites. So just to do a quick critique of the water balance methods, if we compare the IWA water balance with the UK water balance, so the IWA water balance is developed for global standardization, whereas the UK is developed for the UK specific context. In terms of the structure, the IWA water balance has a clear distinction between apparent and real losses, whereas the UK water balance has less emphasis on this split. In terms of terminology, the IWA water balance is globally recognized and consistently defined, whereas the UK water balance uses some UK-specific terms. The IWA water balance is designed to be adaptable for various countries, whereas the UK is less adaptable because it's UK-specific. In terms of best practice, the IWA water balance promotes consistent benchmarking globally, whereas the UK water balance is focused on national and regional comparisons, so we can compare water companies in England and Wales quite well, but it's harder to compare them internationally. The IWA water balance focuses a lot on non-revenue water. There's less focus on customer side leakage, whereas in the UK, we focus on leakage. and there's more focus on customer side leakage. The IWA water balance isn't validated against bottom up leakage, whereas in the UK, it is reconciled with bottom up leakage and it uses the MLE process to do so. So, and that's what, again, we're going to explore a bit later on in this webinar. So there's a lot of, I guess, good points for the IWA water balance being better than UK water balance, but then there's also some good points with the UK water balance that could be applied in the IWA water balance. We did a little vote in one of our user conferences with our clients, and I guess it was fairly evenly split about whether the UK whether we should adopt the IWA water balance to align with international best practice. And I think part of it is just understanding the IWA water balance better, from the England and Wales water companies. And once they understand it better and become more confident in it, maybe they would want to adopt it. So just some food for thought before we move on to the next section. So the IWA water balance makes international comparisons easier, but does it focus enough on real losses? So really, I'm just trying to point out that based on my experience, a lot of focus is on non-revenue water, and working in the UK, a lot of the focus is on leakage, which is, really it's real losses. And so you could say, does the UK focus enough on non-revenue water? Does the international water balance focus enough on real losses? The IWA water balance does no validation with bottom-up leakage. And is there a consequence to this? A lot of international water utilities have DMAs and are utilizing them. And should, if they are more advanced, should they then validate their leakage, their water balance with the results from their DMAs? And UK water companies are accountable for customer side leakage, and that's a good thing, isn't it? Or maybe it's not. Maybe we should be less accountable for customer side leakage, and that should be the customer's problem. So just some food for thought. So we're going to move on to uncertainty analysis. So it's important to check the reliability of the water balance calculations, and that's why we need to apply uncertainty analysis. And all measured or estimated input data used in the water balance are subject to varying degrees of error and uncertainty. And these inaccuracies can accumulate, impacting the calculated volumes of non-revenue water, apparent losses, and real losses. So a probability analysis has been developed by the IWA water loss specialist group for the water balance to enable assessment of the overall reliability of the results. It uses a 95% confidence limits, and the use of 95% confidence limits simply means that calculations based on approximate data will have wider confidence intervals than those derived from more reliable data. And it's based on this bell-shaped curve, which represents a normal statistical distribution. And we're going to look at how we apply those 95% confidence limits to the IWA water balance for this English water company. So in the water balance, confidence limits are entered as a percentage uncertainty range, which means I am 95% confident that the value I have inputted is within X% of the true value. So we can see for our water balance for this English water company, these are the actual confidence limits that they have applied in their water balance calculation. So I guess it's important to say that both the UK and the IWA, they apply confidence limits to the water balance. So these confidence limits should be applied to all of the data inputs. So it's to all these values in blue. And then once the blue values have been entered, then the water balance can then automatically calculate the 95% confidence limit for the derived values. And I'll show you how it does that. So the first thing that it does is to calculate the standard deviation and the variance for each of the data inputs in the water balance based on the 95% confidence limits applied. So you can see here that the standard deviation is the volume multiplied by the confidence limit and divided by 1.96. And the 1.96 is to take into account the 95% confidence limit that we're applying. So it's basically this 1947.2 times 3.75% divided by 1.96, and that equals that 37.26, that standard deviation there. And then the next thing that we do is to work out the variance, which is the standard deviation squared. So we take that 37.26, we square it, and then we get that number there, 1387.94. So we can do that for all of the data inputs, all of the ones where we've entered confidence limits. And the next step is we then need to work out what the confidence limits are for the derived values. So to do this, for the variance, we simply sum it up for our components. So for build authorized consumption, we sum up these two items and we get the variance. The standard deviation is then the square root of the variance. So we're getting the square root of that to get 18.15. And then the 95% confidence limit is the standard deviation divided by the volume times 1.96. So in other words, we're back calculating now what this 95% confidence limit is, and we get 2.33%. So then we can apply that to our calculations, and we can see that the 95% confidence limit for non-revenue water has been calculated as 19.27%. And this is despite the water supplied and build authorized consumption limits being only 3.75% and 2.33%. And the reason why it's done that is because the water supplied has the highest variance, and this is having a big impact on the confidence limit for non-revenue water. So in other words, this variance is a bigger proportion of this number here. So that's why this percentage is higher. We can then see the 95% confidence limits for water losses. And this is slightly worse than non-revenue water because of the low confidence in unbilled authorized consumption here. We can see the 95% confidence limits for apparent losses, which is nearly 25%, plus or minus 25%. And that's because of the low confidence in the unauthorized consumption, 50% here. And then finally, we can see what our 95% confidence limit would be for real losses, so plus or minus 28%. And it's really getting influenced a lot by the water supplied. So it's just like non-revenue water. This water supplied is having a big impact on the real losses. This chart shows the upper and lower limits of non-revenue water, real losses and apparent losses after carrying out the water balance and applying the 95% confidence limits. So we can see, there's a big difference between the upper and lower limit for non-revenue water, for real losses and apparent losses. And I think it's important to say that what this enables you to do is focus on the components in your water balance that are causing you the most uncertainty, and then you can then do something about it. And this is really just illustrating that if you improved your confidence in water supplied, so if it was 2% instead of 3.75%, then it has a big impact on the reliability of the water balance. You can see how the non-revenue water reliability gets better, and then the real losses reliability gets better. And this is reflected in this chart where we can see now our uncertainty range is a lot smaller, and that means we've got greater confidence in the results. So it's really just showing how you can apply the confidence limit into the water balance. So just to put this into practice with a little case study, a small case study, and this is really about a ring main that goes around a well-known city in the UK, and it's got 80 kilometres of tunnels transporting water from 5 water treatment works throughout the city. It has 25 shafts made up of input, output, and inspection shafts. And the sections are shut down and maintained once every 10 years. And it's very difficult to access. It's got 13 inlet meters and then 44 outlet meters. The issue in this ring main was that when they measured the input versus the output, then there was a discrepancy of 55.9 megalitres per day. So it's a large discrepancy, and that was based on the flow balances. And so we focused investigations on 3 key areas, which was operational use in the 25 shafts, doing flow balances between shafts, and then verification of the input-output meters. And this is just a photo of what the pipe, the ring main looks like. So it's 2.5 meters in diameter and 30 meters below ground. So the first thing that we did was focused on the operational use. And you can see here how we installed AMR meters on the components that we're using operational use. So here, this is the thrust-bearing cooling water for the pumps, and this obviously takes water and uses it. And this is before, after a meter was installed. So now we can measure exactly how much water is getting used for that. This is a sampling line for turbidity checks and other water quality checks. And this is a sampling line before, and then this is a sampling line after, where we've put an AMR meter on there. And what you basically get before we install these meters, then it's really a bit of guesswork about how much water these how much operational use is actually being used. But once you've installed these meters, you know exactly how much water is being used. And you can see all of these are sampling sites, and you can see how different they are for all of the different sites. So see how important it is to actually measure the operational use at these sites. Next thing that we did was to do flow balances between shafts using an ultrasonic meter to assess if there's any leakage on any section of the ring main. You can see that that's inside the shaft here, and this is the pipe, and then these are the meter is getting strapped around the pipe to measure the flow. And from this, we were able to see that there was little or no discrepancy from this water treatment works to this shaft here. But then between these 2 shafts, we could see that there was a 4.4 megaliter discrepancy. And so we suspect that there is some leakage on this section here of the ring main. And then the other thing that we did was to do some meter verifications. And this is just an example of one of the situations that we came across where we have a shaft that has two um, DI meters or distribution input meters coming into it. So these are production meters. And then they go out of the shaft and into the ring main. And there was a location for a meter here, but it didn't actually have a meter installed because of flooding. And this is all 30 meters below ground. And then this is a picture um, of that location there where we installed the ultrasonic meter. So that this company, I think Flexum, they're very pleased. So they were showcasing it in a magazine of where we installed that meter. And basically, what we discovered is that there was quite a big difference between where our meter was installed and the sum of the DI meters. Sorry, just to go back, this DI meter was verified annually, whereas this DI meter couldn't be verified of the location of it. So we discovered a big discrepancy, 14.2 megaliters difference, and so it was overreading. There's too much water being registered as coming into the ring main than what actually was. So we also verified several output meters and found that they were under reading. And then this combined with everything else accounted for 47% of a total discrepancy. So remember, we had a 55.9 megaliter discrepancy. And then you can see we accounted for some of it with operational use. Some of it was leakage, but a quite big chunk of it was, in fact, metering inaccuracies. And there's still a large portion that is unknown. It's still getting investigated. So it's really just to, I guess, illustrate what uncertainty means in practice. It means that you can be over or underestimating your losses on a network. So just some food for thought before we move on to the next section. So now that we can see where the biggest uncertainty is in the water balance, it provides the evidence to improve its accuracy in a more focused way. So in other words, you can see what's having a big impact on your confidence, and then you can try and do something about it. Water supplied has the biggest influence on the reliability of the water balance, but it should be easy to get to 1 to 2% accuracy, shouldn't it? And I guess this is a bit of a question mark, because based on my experience, it's quite hard to do. But you may be doing a water balance and just doing this kind of uncertainty analysis and just assuming that it's 1% or assuming that it's 2%. And really, I think that should be based on hard evidence of going out and doing some verifications of your meters and then working out how accurate your meters really are. And then after carrying out the uncertainty analysis, does this make you more certain or less certain about the water balance results? So that's always the question, isn't it? Does it improve your confidence, or does it make you worry more? But at least you can do something about it. So the next bit that we're going to look at is the top down and bottom up reconciliation. So first, I will just focus on the bottom up water balance and explain a little bit about what it is. So there's two methods to calculate water losses in a DMA, which is what we mean by the bottom up water balance. And the first method is the night flow water balance based on a minimum night flow as a starting point. And that's illustrated here, where we've got the minimum night flow, we've got night use, and then we can work out the leakage. And the second method is the daily flow water balance. And this is based on the total daily flow. We take away consumption and we can work out the losses. When we think about the DMA leakage calculations, then we Within a DMA itself, we will have some actual flows, which are things like continuously logged users and smart meters, where we know, what they are actually using in a day or during the night. And then we'll have estimated flows, where we're estimating the night use and estimating the daily consumption. And as a rule, the greater the percent that is actual is always going to give you more accuracy in your results. And the greater the percent that is measured is going to give you higher confidence. So the more measured consumption that you have, the more confidence that you'll have in your results. But this is dependent on having a good night use model and also having good meter readings frequency for your measured consumption. When we think about the night flow water balance, it starts with its minimum night flow. And here we're deducting the things that we actually know. So the continuously logged night flow and the smart metered night flow. And then we're deducting the estimated night use for our households or non-households and any miscellaneous use. And what we're left with is the night flow leakage. And then we multiply that by a night day factor. And that gives us our daily leakage. When we think about pressure and leakage, then we have to use the average zone night pressure and night day factor to adjust our leakage. So this is a typical DMA where we've got an inlet meter, we've got a critical pressure point, and we've got an average zone point. And this is the flow for the DMA, and this is the pressure at our average zone point. And that's what our leakage would look like. It varies throughout the day, dependent on the pressure. Leakage is calculated at night when pressure is high, which must be considered when converting this to daily leakage. And if we just multiply leakage by 24 hours, you'd be assuming that it's constant throughout the day. So we have to work out the night day factor, which uses the ratio between the night pressure and the average daily pressure to adjust the leakage. So we've got the average zone night pressure here, which is at the same time as you take your minimum night flow. And then we've got our average pressure, and it's the ratio between those two. And that allows us to adjust our leakage. Once we've calculated leakage for a DMA, you can see here that this is the minimum night flow along the top. And then we've got all of the components that we're deducting. And then what we're left with at the end is the leakage. And then you can see how leakage varies, especially in the UK throughout the year, during the warm periods and in the cold periods where it increases. And then this is that same graph, but just showing, sorry, skip there, just showing the daily leakage trend. And again, we can see how that varies throughout the year, the warm period and the cold period. The daily flow water balance for a DMA is the same calculation, but we're using the total daily flow as a starting point. We're still deducting our actual flows from our continuous logged and our smart meters, and then our estimated consumptions, and we come up with our daily losses. And then, as good practice, it's good to compare the results from those two water balances for your DMA, because the closer they are to each other, the better. And that's what we use in the UK, that kind of measurement, to say whether a DMA is operable. If you're getting quite close results between those two water balances for a DMA. So that's just really a very quick summary of the bottom-up water balance that you're doing for each individual DMA, and then aggregating up to get a total amount of leakage based on your DMAs for your water company. And then what we do in the UK is we then apply maximum likelihood estimation, which is a way of distributing the difference between the top-down water balance and the bottom-up water balance. So basically, the difference between when we do, the IWA water balance and when we add up all of the DMAs, what do we get? And we call the difference the discrepancy. And we do that. So we've got the top down, the bottom up, and we can only report one value of leakage in the UK. And to do that, we apply what's this MLE, maximum likelihood estimation. So the size of the discrepancy is important. And in the UK, the discrepancy in proportion to water supplied must be plus or minus 5% to apply MLE. This illustration shows the top-down leakage. For, just as an example, we've got 10 megalitres per day, bottom-up leakage 9 megalitres per day. The discrepancy is 1 megalitre per day. And then the water supplied is 50 megalitres per day. So 1 divided by 50 gives us 2%, and that would be acceptable, to enable MLE to be applied. And it's just worth noting that this discrepancy is also referred to as the water balance gap. So if we put this MLE into practice, and we're going to apply it to the IWA water balance for this English water company, then this, if you remember, was our final table after applying the uncertainty analysis. And what we do with MLE is we're using those same confidence limits, but in a different way. So we've added this post MLE column, which is going to be our adjusted values. We've still got these same confidence limits, but we've now got some more confidence limits for our DMA leakage and our trunk mains and service reservoir leakage. And we've got our discrepancy at the bottom. So you can see for this particular water company, the discrepancy is minus 3 megalitre per day, minus 0.2%. So it's quite small. So we've also got some new columns to the right because we're going to use the confidence limits in a different way. So the first thing that we do is we work out our confidence range. And this is the volume here multiplied by the confidence limit here. And that gives us 73.02. Then we work out our error contribution, which is this confidence range here squared. And that gives us this big number here. And then we work out our error contribution percentage. And to do that, we have to sum up all of the error contributions here. And then we're dividing this error contribution by that to say basically which component is having the most impact on my discrepancy, as an error. And so that's shown here. And we can see that this water supplied component is having the biggest impact. And then when we apply all of them, it adds up to 100%. So you can see that the different components and what's having the biggest impact. And then we use that percentage to then adjust. So we call that the error adjustment, which is basically this error contribution times the discrepancy here. So we're multiplying each one of them by -3. So we get -2.32 here. And then we work it all the way down, and then it adds up to -3. So we've worked out that error adjustment. And then we adjust the actual water balance itself. And all of the error adjustments are added to the components apart from water supplied, where the error adjustment is deducted from it. So that's why that's got a negative. So once we apply that, we then get our what's called post-MLE values, which are revised figures after the error adjustment has been applied. And we can see that we can then recalculate all of these red values here based on these new values in the components. And you can see that some of the items, such as non-revenue water, have gone up, apparent losses have gone down, and then real losses has gone up. But most importantly, we can see that these two values are now the same, and the bottom up real losses and the top down real losses now match. Now, if the error was 5%, so we had this big discrepancy here of 5%, you can see what happens in the water balance to these numbers. You can see how your non-revenue water would go down, your apparent losses would go up, and your top-down real losses would go down. So it's just really a bit of an illustration about what might happen if your discrepancy is bigger. So just some food for thought again. So rather than knowing the uncertainty in the water balance, the bottom-up validation with MLE enables you to apply the uncertainty to the water balance results. Once the water balance is validated with bottom-up, it can make your reported real losses and non-revenue water lower because of applying MLE. Would this be accepted as good practice internationally? So it's just really a question to think about, because we do this in the UK and it's accepted as good practice because we're just focusing really on that one number, leakage, and we're trying to reconcile leakage to get a more accurate estimate. Whereas the international water balance, we do focus on non-revenue water, we focus on apparent losses, and we focus on real losses. And you could end up adjusting them all. Should more focus be placed internationally on improving the accuracy of real losses in the water balance? So should some of the components that are used in the water balance, should more studies be carried out or investigation be carried out to say, well, what is the actual confidence that we've got in these numbers, or is it just something arbitrary that we're putting in? So that's just some food for thought. So our final section, which is about performance indicators. So the recommended form of expression of non-revenue water or real losses is a normalized value that can be easily comparable with other areas, and all indicators must be measured when the system is pressurized. So for non-revenue water, you're not meant to report non-revenue water as a percentage of water supplied, although everyone still does, but it's not a very reliable comparison. Non-revenue water per service connection per day is a much better comparison for non-revenue water. For apparent losses, you could use percentage of authorized consumption or apparent losses per service connection per day. And for real losses, you can use leakage per service connection per day, leakage per length of main per day. You can use the combined real loss indicator or the infrastructure leakage index, ILI. And these are just the results for this water company that we've been looking at. And you can see the results for non-revenue water based on the top-down water balance first, and then we've got our upper, lower limit and our post-MLE results. So you can see how the results vary, once we've applied the MLE analysis. And then these are the results for apparent losses for this particular water company, again, following that same approach. And then these are the results for the real losses for this same water company, where we've got per connection, per meter, and then we've got the curly combined real losses indicator and the ILI. And this is quite interesting because we can see how these results, if you based on the lower limit, how low they could actually be, if you really got more confident in your numbers, and it could be in fact that low. And then the post MLE results, and then just these final couple of slides are just to show what the combined real loss indicator is. It's a leakage performance indicator being widely adopted by the IWA, Water Loss Specialist Group, that measures real water losses in distribution networks, and it combines leakage per connection and leakage per meter of main into a single index. So in other words, we take the real losses per connection per day, multiply it by the real losses per mains length per day, and do the square root of it. And it's really um, trying to find the middle ground between real losses per connection and real losses per length of main. Because if you've got a really if you look at this example here, where we've got leakage per property per day and leakage per length of main, some of the water companies, if you looked at leakage per property per day, then they would be very leaky. So example here is like Welsh water here would be very leaky based on leakage per property per day. But then when you look at leakage per length of main, it's not very leaky. So the idea of Curly is to more look at both things and see where you sit on that line. Um, and for this particular water company, you can see all the individual zones that make up it, and you see how much um, they, they vary within the water company itself. So some of the zones are are very leaky. They'd be kind of up here, and some of the zones are really not. Sorry, really not that leaky at all. They'd be even down here. And then the final performance indicator, ILI, which is a measure of how well a distribution network is managed, maintained, repaired, and rehabilitated as regards control of real physical losses at current operating pressure. And it's the ratio of real losses to unavoidable annual real losses, or UARL. And you can see the ILIs of England and Wales compared with international companies. So England and Wales ILI is around 1.7. This particular water company has an ILI of 1.6. But I guess to bear in mind is that the real losses that we're calculating in England and Wales is slightly higher because we include that supply pipe leakage in it. So finally, just some food for thought for this section. So having standard performance indicators based on a reliable water balance will allow meaningful comparisons of non-revenue water, apparent losses, and real losses. So really, are all these performance indicators valid? There's a lot of them. Which ones should we use? And could they potentially be manipulated? So how can we ensure transparent reporting, which is what off, what do, in their approach. So summary, we've looked at carrying out a water balance, assessing the reliability of the water balance using confidence intervals, applying maximum likelihood estimation to reconcile top down and bottom up. And then we looked at some performance indicators for water losses. And then Michael's appeared. So that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much. Just a reminder that as we're going to go into extra time, I think, Tom, that this
Sorry.
recording will be on YouTube. No apologies. I think this is an absolutely brilliant presentation for someone, especially if they're coming into a UK water company and you want to explain to them how the water balance works. We've got some really good kind of case studies there and a really good work example. Also, I think it's really helped us understand the similarities and the differences between the IWA water balance and the UK one. But what I was saying is this will be recorded, or it is being recorded, and it'll be on YouTube in the next 48 hours. But we've got a few good questions. Stuart Tro's got a couple of questions, but I want to ask you a question before we get to Stuart's questions, Tom. So for a long time, we've been hearing, and we know that Ofwat in the UK, in England and Wales, are doing a review of how leakage is assessed, how leakage is reported on there. And obviously, some of the conversations has been, well, maybe the UK should follow the IWA approach and go to the IWA water balance. And you got that vote that you showed us earlier from a conference you held earlier in the year. But maybe the question should go the other way. Should the rest of the world be kind of looking at what they're doing in the UK, especially the rest of the world where they've got DMAs, and say, actually, we should be following the UK's current methodology? Tom, I just wanted your thoughts on that.
Yes. So I think that it that the some of the things that we do in the UK that the IWA could follow, especially the reconciliation with the bottom up, where you've got a more advanced water company that has DMAs, then you can use that bottom up to validate your real losses. Because at the moment, I don't feel like there's any real way to validate the real losses that you're you know reporting on internationally. And whereas doing it with the bottom up, it does give you that confidence that your two numbers are aligned. So I think that that's something that I would like. I think would be a good thing to do, and would be quite easy to apply because you've already got all the confidence measures that you're using anyway, and it's just using it in a different way.
Okay. And
That's
just a
my
very quick
thoughts.
answer, just a very quick question on that as a follow-up, or a very quick answer, hopefully. What should that limitation be? So at the moment, Ofwat say that to really be gold standard, you should be plus or minus 2%, the difference should be before you reconcile on there. Is that too tight or should it be wider, Tom? What are your thoughts?
I well, I think what our foot says is it 2% you can just do, but if you go up to 5%, you've got to give some explanation, you know,
Yeah,
of of why.
if you go
And so
if you go up
so
above
I,
5%, then it changes a little bit. But yeah, you can go up to 5% at the minute.
so I think it shouldn't be tighter internationally. I think it should be wider because if you make it too tight, it can be too it makes it quite hard to apply. And I think it should be used as a way of validating their leakage initially, rather than actually changing the numbers too much. So I think it's like a good exercise that they can do to work towards getting it within, as you say, plus or minus 2%, because that is the hard evidence that those confidence limits that you're um, applying are true. That's my view on
Okay,
it.
brilliant. Thank you, Tom. Okay, so let's go to some of the questions. If you open up your chat, Tom, you'll see some of the questions. So
Shall
the
I close,
first
stop
one is
sharing,
yeah,
Michael?
yeah, let's stop
How,
sharing.
how do I
Um,
do that?
I'll I'll read out the questions. So if you go down to share, there we go. Gosh, we've got lots of people still here. So let's go to Stuart's question. So Stuart said, in the UK, we have properties that are metered in the highway boundary. Some are metered internally, and a significant portion that are unmetered. Should we report internally and externally metered properties separately in the water balance?
It's asking me a complicated question. I think I'd probably, it's not, it might be better to give your view on that, Michael. I don't know, because you're like more of a practitioner on it. But yeah, I think, in short answer, I think yes, because there is that difference between externally and internally metered um, properties. That's my
I think
simple answer is
I think
yes.
yeah, yeah, I think it'll be a logical improvement to do them differently because how customers react to that, how we manage that is different, whether they've got a meter there or not. Stuart, you seem to be nodding, so do you want to answer your own question?
Have I unmuted myself?
You have unmuted yourself.
Oh, okay. That's why I asked the question. I think they should be because obviously externally metered includes the leakage on the supply pipe, and internally metered doesn't include the leakage on the supply pipe. And I think from in Tom's excellent presentation, you made the reference to the meter accuracy and so on. I think that you've got two different types of meter with different accuracy levels.
Mm,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be a good movement forward. I'm going to ask Stuart's next question on here. So he says, Tom, as you've explained, in the UK, we reconcile top-down estimates of leakage from the water balance with a bottom-up estimate from DMAs through the MLE technique. That results in all components being adjusted, including DI. Here's the question. Should DI be adjusted when it's a measured value?
Well, short answer uh, is yes, because you're adjusting other things that are measured values. So in order to make it work, it needs to be adjusted, doesn't it? That's the whole point of the MLE. Otherwise, you wouldn't you would say that you're 100% confident in that DI. So I think it should be adjusted as part of the process. But I'd welcome I'd welcome Stuart.
You could
He's
ask
probably got
Mike.
some ideas on it, so it's
I,
better if he
I,
says his.
I agree that it should be adjusted, but I think the water companies need to put some more effort into understanding the level of confidence in DI, because
Yes,
DI isn't one particular value. As you've explained, it's made up of a lot of different meters, some of which
yeah,
have greater uncertainty than others. You showed a classic
yes,
example there.
yeah.
So I think the companies need to look at their DI and put different confidence grades against each DI meter.
And the thing, just to back up, that this water company that I was shown does do that. So that's how they came up with their 3.75% was it was a result of all their individual meters and then working it out.
Yeah,
Um,
good.
but what I don't know, I was having, I don't know where it came across, I was having a bit of a rant about was that I noticed that in other water balances, when they do it internationally, they assume it's 1%. And I don't know whether they've got any any evidence to say that it's 1%. And that's where I was saying, that you can't just assume it's 1%. You should have some evidence to back it up. And I think they would find it's not 1%.
That's just another complication of comparing water loss levels between different countries. Oh,
Yeah.
is this sort of standard of sort of regulation and checks on those values?
Mm.
So two other questions then, Tom, that kind of relate to this. Can we ever get away from estimates? Will we ever be in a world where the water balance is always completely calculated, or are estimates just part of life and we got to live with that on there? And then I guess the second question is, as Ofwat are doing this review at the minute, should Ofwat encourage, enforce water companies in the UK, even if they don't go with this approach as their new methodology, say you've got to do an IWA water balance so we can make an international comparison? Because some water companies will say when they do an international comparison on water losses, the UK companies look bad for the reasons that you've suggested, that actually we add on a lot of supply pipe leakage. So I guess two questions there. Can we ever get away from estimates? And B, should the water companies be encouraged or forced to do an IWA water balance just so we can do an international comparison?
So first, I don't think we'll ever get away from estimates, even where you've got smart meters, and even where you've got full coverage of smart meters, then within any DMA, one of those smart meters will not be working at any one time, and you still have to estimate something. So the level of estimation can be a lot less, and it can also be a lot more accurate. But I don't think we'll ever truly get away from. There might be one case where we don't, but I think we'll always have to estimate. It's just the way that we estimate is going to get better and better and better, um, which we can see because we've got a lot more data. In terms of the second question, um, so this is again a little bit of a rant. I feel like that in the UK, if we had to report on non-revenue water, then it's a bigger number and it would force us to do something about some of the things like meter under registration or illegal use. Whereas at the moment, what we're very good at is kind of saying how we've come to that number, through the studies, but not what we're doing about it. Whereas internationally, because the focus is on non-revenue water, that number, they focus a lot of their programs on reducing those elements of it. So I think that's one good thing that could come out of it if UK companies had to report on non-revenue water. And then on the flip side, like you're saying, the actual real losses, that if we did it internationally, it could potentially put us in a little bit of a better light, in terms of the leakage, that we're reporting. You can see Dave P's appeared. I don't know whether he's got any views on it.
And
No,
he's
no,
unmuted as well.
Yeah.
yeah, I have. No, I was going to say, I mean, you talk about coming back to trying to use less estimates, which was one of the main drivers for Ofwat doing their investigation. And here we are in the UK estimating what we think is supply pipe leakage on externally metered premises and taking it away. And that is a nightmare trying to estimate supply pipe leakage. So I think using the measured value at the meter is by far the better way. I think our problem is, like Stuart said at the beginning, we have a real ragbag of internally measured properties, externally measured properties, and in the case of one company, measured in the wall of the property. So we, if anything, well, we're far too late now, but it would be nice if Ofwat said, legislated where the meter had to be put.
We might be 30 years too late, as you say, Dave, for that.
Yeah, exactly. One of a bee in my bonnet is that the companies often use the confidence of the measurement of one meter, like they say, water supply meters have to be plus or minus 2%, and they apply that 2% in the MLE or even in the reliability work. And that is incorrect, because if you have 100 meters which are contributing to your DI, then on average, if they were all taking the same volume, your uncertainty would be 2% divided by the root of 10, root of 100, which is 10. So it'd be 0.2%. So the actual uncertainty in DI comes down significantly if you have a lot of meters measuring your DI, because that's all to do with the contribution of some are plus and some are minus.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Dave, on that. Any further questions for Mr. Crowder, for Tom, before he goes? Okay. So just to thank Tom again for his wonderful presentation. Again, be on YouTube very soon. This is a great presentation for us experienced people, but for those new to the industry or new to the water balance especially. Just a reminder that tomorrow is Water Loss Day. Again, if you're able to put something on the socials, that'd be absolutely fantastic. Remind people of the importance of water loss. And thank you for what you're all doing to reduce water loss around the globe. Have an absolutely wonderful day wherever you are. And we've got more coming up. We've got one more presentation this year, a webinar, and then we've got several more presentations at the start of 2026. So thank you. Goodbye.
Cheers, Michael.
Bye.
Cheers.
Cheers, Tom.
Bye, Dave.